This is Dan Dicks here reporting for Press for Truth. We're here in Vancouver, and I'm joined right now by Vlad of Hugs Over Masks. Thanks so much for joining us here. Now, I want to get your views on the current legislation they're trying to push for right now to try to force mandatory masks on people. But before we get into that, maybe you could tell us a little bit about why you took it upon yourself to found Hugs Over Masks and to become such a vocal person in this movement.
Thank you, Dan. So, Hugs Over Masks started during end the lockdown protests in May in the Queen's Park in Toronto, where I've been living in Toronto for the last 21 years. And I went to my first protest ever in my life on May 2nd. You know, I really admire, people like yourself who's been, like true activists for many, many years and kind of laying the foundation and keeping the fight going until more people joining now. So thank you for that. So Hugs Over Mask represents really humanity more than anything. Hug stands for humanity in the sense of children hug each other intuitively without even thinking. And it just, when we embrace each other, there's like, it's nonverbal communication, right? Like there's nothing like you giving a hug to someone and you really embrace them fully, and so that's kind of the first part. Masks, even though we obviously opposing the mask itself, it also actually is a symbol, right? It's a symbol of tyranny and oppression, and then over is also there for a reason, because I remember when I just started the movement, my friends were saying like, why don't you say hugs not masks? And I said over is there for a reason, because we're really going to overpower and overtake with positivity and love this tyranny and oppression.
Right. So a lot of people are, just to play devil's advocate, going to say, well, hang on a second, aren't you contributing to killing grandmas? I mean, how can you advocate for hugging someone in this current pandemic? What do you say to those people?
Well, I could possibly understand people saying that back in March or maybe even April, but the reality, and that's really when I became super active and then started the movement, by end of April we had real data. The real data showed that this virus is not as deadly as they tried to perceive it to be. And in fact, the measures themselves actually cause way more death than the COVID itself, including elderly people. In fact, there's actually protests now being organized by retirement homes, where you have elderly people in front of retirement homes with a sign, "I'd rather die from COVID than loneliness," because isolation actually does kill.
Yes, it does. It's psychological warfare on people. In fact, it's how they manipulate prisoners. It's how people who hold captives people. It's how they manipulate them.
It's a well-known CIA technique. And then just think about it. That's what we subjected our children back in March and April. And I have a four-year-old son myself. So for me, this is as personal as they're going to get. Because even back then, in March and April, I saw tremendous psychological damage already been done to children. And that's why when I personally joined the protest, from the beginning, my whole initiative was to bring children and humanity and family aspect to the rallies. I didn't really want to have a protest in a traditional protest setting. I wanted to be more of a festival of life, of people coming together and just living their life and experiencing anything that they want to do in that setting. And unfortunately, I was not allowed, so we did it as a protest. We did it as a rally. But we've been gathering in parks all across this country every single week on a Sundays. We call them festivals of life. And that's the idea, for like-minded people to come together. So the Hugs Over Mask, I always say, stands for two main things. One is with truth education campaign and platform. In other words, we provide people with alternative perspective to the mainstream media and government propaganda agenda. And then we have these educational flyers that we distribute. So we actually really empower people with information, and I believe in that. I believe as long as you give people information, the one that's willing to take it, they're going to be able to adjust their behaviors. And the second thing that we do with Hugs Over Mask is we provide this community building aspect, where you have these local chapters all around the country and the world at this point, where like-minded people come together and they don't feel alone anymore. They know that there's other people like themselves that they can be together and they can support each other during these times.
Now, here we are at Vancouver City Hall. There's a protest happening here today. Tell us a little bit about what brought you out here today specifically while you're here.
So the City Hall is discussing mandatory mask policy at Vancouver civic facilities. So in other words, for all the city workers, they're going to be required or mandated actually mandatory masks wearing, right? And to me, this is just such a standard playbook that's been happening all around the world and even in this country, because what happens is they always do this measure slowly, right? They always do them gradually. Remember, this is only for the 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Now, almost 7 months later, we're still here. there, right? So same thing happens with these measures. First, we roll them out only to the city workers, but even during this vote, they actually can change the policy even before the vote goes through and mandate it for the whole city. And I won't be surprised that's actually what might even happen, right? And make a comparison, for example, to Ontario. They mandated mandatory contact tracing apps on the city phones. So if you work for the city, you have no longer an option whether you want or not to have a tracking app. You will have it regardless. Yeah. So same thing happening here. And I always use this metaphor is how do you cook a frog? You know, you put a live frog in a cold pot of water and you increase the heat slowly, and the frog never jumps out. It cooks to death. So this is what the government's been doing to people in this country and around the world, unfortunately, is they've been cooking us slowly.
Yeah, it is a boiling frog scenario. We're moving incrementally towards all-out tyranny, but it seems to be escalating now at a very fast pace. So now people who are watching this are probably going to be very interested in potentially getting involved and maybe even starting your own chapter wherever you are. Tell people how they can do that.
Sure, thank you. So hugsovermasks.ca, you can sign up right on the website and you know, contact us. Let us know specifically you'd like to start a chapter. We have all the different resources to help people to get going. And more than anything, it's about taking daily action. You know, Hugs Over Mask truly stands for impacting local communities on a daily basis. So we have these outreach teams. We can organize, we can go, we can talk to businesses, we can educate businesses about exemptions, and all that stuff is important.
Fantastic. Guys, I really want to encourage you, check the links in the description, and we can't not end this interview without a hug, right? So, yes. All right, man. Cool.
Thank you.
All right, we all want truth. The truth will set you free.